And we are back after a few weeks break. I want to welcome you to the Clayton Tyner podcast. I want to thank those of you who have been watching, who have been sharing. My name is Clayton Tyner. You can follow me on Instagram as well as on Twitter at Clayton Tyner. And to help push this show forward, make sure if you're watching on YouTube, there's kind of the trifecta of how we build this channel. You like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're listening to this on audio only, make sure you are subscribed and make sure you guys are using your voice. Today, we are talking about the wealthy way, the wealthy way. Now, for those who know me, maybe you are wondering what in the world I have to say about being wealthy. And oftentimes, when we think of wealthy, we conflate it with the idea of being rich. As a matter of fact, if you look up just on Google the definition for wealthy, what it says is having a great deal of money, resources, or assets. And then there is a semicolon, and it kind of shows its hand. It says having a great deal of money, resources, or assets, semicolon, rich. So it's like, basically, here's the bottom line. It's having a bunch of stuff, or what we like to call being rich. And that's a conflation that I think is really easy to make. And being rich is not a problem that I currently have. Got 99 problems. Being rich ain't one. Okay. So over the last 10 years or so, Katie and I, our family has been on quite the interesting financial journey. And what we do here on this podcast is we try to explore topics that matter. We try to think deeply about things, try to really dive into topics and take a little bit of the time that we normally spend scrolling through feeds or binging through shows and just really, really think, put some really concerted effort into being learners and not knowers. And sometimes life gives you the opportunities to kind of build skill sets or really, really, really suffer. And sometimes life gives you the opportunity to build skill sets by suffering and through suffering. And Katie and I have had the opportunity to do both of those things. We've suffered significantly in our financial life, and we've been surrounded by great mentors, great role models, examples. We've been through some great programs. We have invested in reading and listening to wise people and wise counsel on the topic of how to handle our money. And today, I want to talk about the wealthy way, but I want to define wealth very carefully. And I actually, for the sake of our conversation, I want to make a distinction that Google and Merriam-Webster dictionary is not making. By ending their definition of wealth with a synonym of being rich, in my mind, they're conflating two very different things. Here's one way to think about it. Being rich is having a lot of money. However, you can be rich and not wealthy. Being rich is having a lot of money. Being wealthy is not having to worry about money. It's a really, really important distinction because you can position yourself in your financial life to where actually the richer you become, the more money you have, the more your money weighs on your mind, weighs on your decision, weighs on your relationships, the more that it tears apart at your marriage, the more difficult it makes your parenting. You can put yourself in a position and you can be in a frame of mind where truly you have more money, you have more problems. Being wealthy is not having to worry about money. And the reason I really, really like this definition is because it means you can be at a lot of different places in your net worth. You can be in almost any tax bracket that exists, and you can experience wealth. You can position yourself and you can position your life to where you're not having to worry about your money. Let's continue to draw some distinctions there. Pursuing a rich life is making you work for your money. And I'm not saying like go out and work hard and get a job and build a skill set and start a business and build a career and invest wisely and keep up with your investments. I'm not saying like work to get your money. I'm saying you actually become a servant to your money. Like you work for your money. You are not the one in charge. Your money is in charge of you. When you are wealthy, your money, it works for you. Not only does it practically work for you to accomplish the things you want to accomplish in life, but it works for you on an emotional level. Your money actually brings you higher peace. It brings things like contentment. When you're wealthy, your money works for you. It works for your family. It helps you pursue your purpose. It allows you to leave something behind you. And again, wealth and a wealthy life, a wealthy mindset. Wealth is something that you can do right where you are. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about the philosophy of being wealthy. I want to challenge our mindsets about how we think about money, how we think about being rich, how we think about being wealthy. And then I want to get to some very, very practical application of how we actually pull this off in our life. I want to share some of my own story and let you know that, you know, Katie and I have a leg to stand on in talking about being in very difficult financial situations and working hard to try to live a wealthy life, even with really low income. To start by talking about the philosophy, what we're saying is the first step towards wealth doesn't happen in your wallet. It doesn't happen in your bank account. It doesn't happen in your annual income. The first step towards wealth happens in your mind. Chances are you have known someone. They might not have been your best friend, maybe someone you went to school with, someone you're just kind of like acquaintances with on Facebook, and you have watched someone in your life, probably more than one person, who has radically increased their wealth. Maybe they did it really quickly. Maybe they got a ginormous promotion, or maybe they did it gradually over time. They really fell into their sweet spot in the workforce, or maybe they came into some family money or something like that. Chances are you've observed somebody increase their financial situation really dramatically. Now, I was once speaking to someone, I'm guessing they're the like richest person I know. They have an extraordinary amount of money. And we were talking about money. And I'll never forget because they told me people say that money can't buy you happiness. And, you know, that's like a really old cliche. And I said, well, what do you think about that? You certainly have enough money to know whether or not that works. And what they told me, I thought was really true. It rang true. They said that's BS. Money can absolutely buy you happiness. Like, it makes you really happy to drive a really nice sports car. It makes you really happy to go on an exotic vacation. It makes you really happy to wear, you know, a watch that most people would have to mortgage a house to get. However, he said, it can make you happy, but it can never make you content. Part of what I want to challenge in how we think about our finances is just how we think about life in general. It seems like somewhere along, and maybe it's kind of a Western idea somehow attached to like the American dream or something like that, that life's highest goal is the pursuit of happiness. And when you look even on a psychological level, happiness is such a fleeting emotion and really such a shallow emotion that to put it at the top of our well-being hierarchy seems like an obvious mistake. Happiness is far less critical to your overall well-being, to your mental health, to your relational stability. It's more important. Happiness is far less important to your life than deeper, more rooted emotions like contentment, like joy, like experiencing peace. Sometimes we view our money as a source to get us happy as quickly as possible, to fill a need as quickly as possible. And in the pursuit of happiness, we shortchange our long-term well-being, our long-term ability to enjoy life at a deep, rooted, balanced, healthy level. Pursuing a rich life makes you work for your money. When you are wealthy, your money begins to work for you. And so let's just be honest. For most of us, our money is not working for us. Most people find themselves in a very difficult financial situation, or at a minimum, in a financial situation that is not leading to peace, joy, and a content life. You find this across the financial spectrum. You find people who have all the money you could ever imagine, who are depressed, who are medicated, and who even commit suicide. It's like we think that if we can pursue happiness, and by happiness, we mean enough money to get instant gratification every time we want it. If we can just get there, our lives will finally pan out. And yet, all you have to do is take a look around at the people who have achieved that, who have gotten the amount of money that they need to buy anything that they want, and they are still miserable. At some level, we know that this doesn't work. We just don't have a better way to think about it. We don't know a better path forward. And what I'm trying to lay out today is the wealthy way. The first step towards this. It doesn't happen in any arena that has to do with your money. It happens in your mind. It happens in how you think about your finances. And even more than that, how you think about who you are and why you are here on planet Earth. A little bit about our financial situation and what we have really struggled through and in large part overcome over the last 10 years. When Katie and I got married, I was a full-time musician, which, if you're wondering, does not make a whole lot of money. Katie was a beautician. She worked in a salon. We were both self-employed. And when we were dating, we were both doing pretty well. For a single guy doing nothing but traveling and playing music, I was making pretty good money, and I had very little bills. Like I lived in this tiny house. I paid like $300 a month rent, all utilities included. It was this crazy situation. My car was paid off. She was making great money as a hairstylist. And man, we would just go and spend and go to the movies and go out to eat. And we didn't really have a budget. We were just kind of living life, man. And we weren't married yet, but we both had quite a bit of money, especially for our station in life. What we were ignoring was the fact that we had both recently graduated college. And as college graduates, we had both racked up extraordinary amounts of student debt. And in fact, once we got married and combined our student debt load, we had over $100,000 in debt. So we had a huge weight that was getting ready to drop on us. At the same time, part of what we felt God was really calling us to was for a season to homeschool the boys. And so when we got married, Katie stepped out of the vocational workforce. Now, being a stay-at-home mom is still an incredible amount of work. Being a homeschool teacher is an incredible amount of work. She didn't stop working. She just stopped getting paid for her work. I took a job at a church in San Antonio, and my income actually decreased significantly, going from being the sole proprietor of my own band to working for a MetaChurch in the San Antonio area. And so we were subsiding. We had joined our lives. We had an instant family. We were a family of 4. We cut our income together by about 2/3. I mean, we went from having some money and having some options to living $15,000 below the average household income at the poverty level in San Antonio. We were in a very difficult situation. Our household income for a family of 4 was about $30,000. Now, that is livable, but when you put on top of it that we were situated underneath 6 figures of student loans, we had both gone to private universities. We hadn't done a great job of paying on that debt up front. And when we were looking at our individual debt, that was one thing. When we were looking at the money we were bringing in our individual debt, that was one thing. But all of a sudden, we cut our combined salary by over 60%. And we realized that the combination of our loans was an immense amount. And so we had some real work to do. And we were in a financial situation where there was no wiggle room. At the same time, we started going through an interesting season in our family where we were frivolously sued over and over. It was a nightmare that is hard to imagine, that I couldn't wish on like the worst enemy I could imagine. And at the end of 2 years, we had put almost another 6 figures of debt on top of what we already had. We were in a serious financial pickle. Like, we were really, really, really struggling. And so maybe that story kind of echoes where you're at, and maybe yours is different. Maybe you just like kept swiping a credit card and then trying to pay that credit card with another credit card. And then in the midst of all of that, a car broke down and you decided to buy a new car because, those salespeople, they're like really good at what they do. And you wanted to just kind of go with a crappy old used car, but it's like, now we might as well get the new one. And then at the same time that happened, you lost a job. And then because you lost a job, you had to figure something out. And whatever your financial situation is, it's like, it can get bad really, really quickly. We were kind of staring down the financial barrel, and it was frankly terrifying. We really weren't sure exactly what to do about it. Fortunately, right at the beginning of our marriage, we were put around some great mentors. We were put through some great programs, and we got our financial bearings. And here's the thing. Most people who are in a financial situation where they're incredibly discontent, they have no peace, they have no joy, it's eroding their marriage, it's causing health problems, stress. What happens is life often works in these cycles, and we talk about this sometime on the podcast. And what happens when we get in a bad financial cycle is usually it begins to compound because our emotions are so deteriorated by the stress of that situation that the last thing we can do is get ourselves to a place where we put a plan together. Because we don't have a plan, the cycle continues, and we end up making decisions that put us in an even worst financial situation. And so on and on the cycle goes. And eventually you end up in a situation where you end up bankrupt, or you end up with just, debt collection agencies calling you night and day. You end up kind of living in financial hell right here on earth. To break the cycle, you have to start by getting a plan, and you have to start by changing your mind about how you are thinking about your life, your finances, and your purpose. The first thing that you have to do to really rethink your finances is you have to discover 2 things. Number 1, you have to discover your mission. And number 2, you have to discover your means. You have to discover your mission, and you have to discover your means. Most people are not living with a real sense of clear purpose in life. And we say this pretty much every episode, but I'm starting with an assumption on this podcast that you were created on purpose and you were created with a purpose. So it matters that you're here on earth. You're not here by accident, and you have something to do. You have a unique contribution to make to this world, that somewhere in who you are, your personality, your makeup, your talent, your gifting, your worldview, how you were raised, where you're positioned, your circle of influence, who you are, and what you have can be used to impact the world around you and the people around you. And so you first have to discover your mission. And when you're living a purposeless life, what you do is you build a facade of purpose by pursuing whatever the world tells you to pursue. And so if you're just living your life to try and emulate the world around you, what you're going to do is settle for instant gratification. You're going to try to use who you are, and important to this conversation, you're going to try to use what you have, your resources and finances, to make you as happy as possible, as quickly as possible. See, what a mission does is it becomes the filter that gives purpose to your resources. Now, the money that you have, the assets that you have, They aren't just to be frivolously used without any real thought or strategy. Now your resources are the fuel for the fire of your purpose that you are trying to unleash on the world. And so, fortunately, Katie and I had at least a vague sense of our mission. As Christians, number one, we know our mission is to love the people around us, and through our example, to make people curious about the God that we believe in. And so we have this mission to love people well, to serve people well, to give money away, and to invite people into a life that roots its purpose in the person of Jesus Christ. And so, what is your mission? What's your mission in your career? What is your mission as a spouse? How do you want to love and support your spouse? What's your mission as a parent? If you don't have clarity on your mission as a parent, then what you're going to use your money for is to appease your children as quickly as possible. If you don't have clarity on your mission as a parent, then what you're going to do is use your money unwisely to give your kids all the crap that you didn't have growing up, not really stopping to think if it's actually good for them to have that or not. The first thing you have to discover is your mission, because if you don't have a mission, you won't know how to properly strategize with your money. You have to discover your mission, and then you have to discover your means. Okay, so your mission gives purpose to your resources, and your means determine how you get to practically live today. Your means determine how you allow yourself to live today in order to build wealth for tomorrow. Your means is simply the resources that you actually have. Those are your means. And if you aren't aware of your means, and as crazy as that sounds, most people are not. If you don't know your means, then you don't have the starting place for living a wealthy life. A wealthy life is a life where you don't have to worry all the time about your money. A wealthy life is a life where your money works for you. Your money actually adds to the life that you want to live now and in the future. Most people have no idea what their means are. And wealth is not magic. Okay, so we're going to move now. We've talked about the philosophy. We got to change our mind about this. We have to discover a mission. We have to see our resources as being used for a higher purpose and to actually add to our unique contribution. We're not just driving new cars all of the time so that we can feel good about having driven something new, or we can look good to the people around us, or we can be like the people in the videos that we watch, or we can finally maybe become an influencer online, or whatever that is. We use our resources for our purposes. We change our mind. We're not trying to be rich. We're trying to be wealthy. And you can be wealthy at any income level, at any tax bracket. You can be wealthy no matter how much money you're making on a consistent basis. Wealth is when you don't have to worry about your money. And so wealth is not magic. Wealth simply boils down to this: spending less than you make. Spending less money than you make. I know. It's like not rocket science. To become wealthy, you have to spend less money than you make, and you have to do that consistently over time. There's no other way around it. So many things in life come down to such incredible simplicity. It's like, if you want to lose weight, you have to burn more calories than you consume. The end. If you burn more calories than you consume, you are going to lose weight. And there's a lot of things that go into that, and how do you eat and how do you decide and everything else. What it boils down to is simple. You have to spend less than you make. And what that's called is living below your means. How do you determine what your means are? For some of you, you're thinking, well, I know my salary. I know how much I make. I just divide that by 12. That's how much I have every month. It's more than that. What you need is a budget. And most people who are like drowning under debt and have no idea where their money's going, have no clue what their means are, have no peace. It's unbelievable. And I didn't look up the statistics, and I should have. You can look them up for yourself. An incredible percentage of divorce filings talk about money. Money and financial struggles and financial arguments are one of the main killer of marriages. And so what you need is a plan, but you're in a cycle and you're in a cycle and you're in a cycle and it's just going and going. And so you're making worse and worse decisions and you're racking up more and more debt and you're trying to cancel debt with debt and you're still buying brand new things, even though you can't even afford the things that you have and you're in a cycle. You need a plan. And to get a plan, you have to change your mind. You have to change your mentality. And the starting place for a plan is a budget. A real budget will show you your means. If you're watching this, you can see this is a very, very simple budget. As a matter of fact, I believe this is a sample of the budgets that McDonald's employees or McDonald's managers are given to train them on how to live a wealthy life. To budget, you have to know how much you're making. And for some of you, that's easier than others. If you are paid salary, then this is pretty simple. I mean, you should be able to open your bank account and look at how much money comes in every pay period. Most people are paid twice a month, either on the 1st and 15th or on the 15th and 30th. Go and just see how much is actually coming in. For those of you who are paid hourly, this is going to be a little more difficult. For those of you who are paid on commission, this is going to be a little more difficult. And so we're trying to determine our means. And once we've determined our means, we must live under them. To become wealthy, we have to spend less than we make consistently over time. So we determine our means and then we live under those means. And so if you are paid an inconsistent salary, here's what you have to do. Take the last 6 months or the last 12 months of what you have made, multiply it together and divide it by that many times. If you take your last 12 paychecks, add them all together and then divide them by 12 and use the average. If you really want to be careful, what you're going to do is take your last 6 lowest paychecks. This is my actual advice. Take your 6 lowest paychecks and find the average and count that as the income on your budget. What happens is if you just take your last 2 paychecks and you don't take into account that those were anomalies, that you had like a record month or whatever, then you're not actually assessing your means. You're going to budget off of an anomaly. You're going to budget off of too high of a number, and you're going to think you have more money to spend than you do. And so take either like the last 12 paychecks and find the average, or if you really want to do this, if you really want to live a wealthy life, take your last 6 lowest, find your last 6 lowest and find the average of that. Maybe you have a second income, you put that on there. Any other income, maybe you receive child support, or maybe you have disability that comes in, or maybe you have some side jobs. Let me tell you, when Katie and I had a household income of $30,000 and had racked up like multiple 6 figures in debt, I had like 15 side jobs. I had to, man. I was cleaning people's houses. I was tutoring kids in math. I was still going and playing music on the side. What else was I doing? I know at one time I had 4 side jobs all at the same time, and I wasn't alone. Katie got side jobs. Katie was still cutting hair on the side. Katie was going in and teaching these like impromptu PE classes. We were just on our grind, man. And so you got to add all that income in there. And at the end of that, you're going to have your total monthly income. Here's everything that I'm making for the month. And so that's your income. That's what's coming in. But that's not all of your means yet, because now you have fixed expenses. And so what are your monthly expenses? And you just got to get in, and you might have to do a little investigation. And I'm telling you, it's like nobody wants to do this. Nobody wants to do this step. You could do it in 2 hours of putting a budget together. And I'm telling you, as someone who has been in financial hell, the moment you have a plan, you have relief. The moment you have a plan, everything changes. The moment you have a plan, you have hope. The moment you have a plan, you have a pathway to peace. This is the wealthy way. It takes work. You are not going to live a wealthy life just by sitting around and hoping that your finances pan out in the end. You have to be proactive. If you don't have a budget, you are living a reactive financial life. How much money do you spend eating out? You don't know. You just get to the end of the month and you've spent how much you spend. What a budget does is it makes you proactive, and you have to become proactive if you want your money to work for you. You have to become proactive if you want to live a life where ultimately you don't have to worry about your money. We have to stop reacting to our finances and take some control over them. And so you start listing out your expenses. Some of these you'll know. It's like, what is your mortgage or your rent? And put it down to the penny. How much does it actually cost? How much are you paying in a car payment? How much are you paying on home insurance? How much do you put towards health insurance? How much is your CPS bill? That's here in San Antonio. That's not Child Protective Services. That's our energy company. How much is your water bill? What are other things you're paying for? Do you have pest control coming once a quarter? Think of everything. How much are you paying for your cell phones? These are all fixed costs. You have to put down all of your fixed costs. And again, if your electricity bill, sometimes it's, $80 a month, sometimes it's $120 a month, put $120. We are budgeting conservatively. We are budgeting in a wise way. We don't find wisdom. Wisdom comes from changing how we are thinking about this, changing our mind, changing our philosophy on money. If we can't do this wisely, we will never be wealthy. Being wise and being wealthy go hand in hand, and you do not have to have a six-figure income to be wise. You can make minimum wage and be wise. And if you can make minimum wage and be wise, you can be wealthy. You can make your money work for you. Once you have your fixed expenses, now you know your means. Your means are your total monthly income minus your fixed expenses. Now, here's what's going to be depressing is some of you are going to take your monthly income and you're going to take your fixed expenses. These are expenses that you have to pay every month, and you're already going to be in the negative. And so at that moment, two things can happen. You really only have two options. Either you have to find a way to make more money, which means you got to work. You got to pick up an extra job. You got to mow some yards. You got to deliver some pizzas. You have to do something. Or, and here's the option I would suggest, you have to ruthlessly interrogate your fixed costs. You have to look at what you're paying for your car. And some of you are living in financial hell and you're making 2 car payments of $600 each every month. You have $1,200. And so maybe you got all your income and then you subtracted all your fixed expenses and you're like $700 in the red. So what that means is before any of your variable costs, those are things like eating out, taking your family to the movies, putting gas inside your car, all of these things that we want to do, the ways that we want to live, the trips we want to go on. So before you've even gotten to that, you're $700 in the red. You're not putting any money in savings. You're not putting any money in retirement. You are living actively in debt to your expenses. And you're paying $1,200 a month because you're driving 2 almost brand new cars. Well, it's time for interrogation. Why do I need these cars? I understand that you can rationalize it. Well, older cars, they're not as safe. And I've got kids in the car. And I mean, if I don't have a safe car, am I really a good parent? And this one has like 47 airbags. And the model from 2013 only has like, 28 airbags. And this one gets like 2 miles better per gallon. And so really, if I drive it for 75 years, I'll come out ahead or whatever, because the truth is, and here's what a plan does. Here's what a budget does. Here's what a mission does, because your life mission can't be drive new cars. If that's your life mission, that is a sad mission. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know you. I don't know who's listening to this right now. Your life is more important than your life's mission to be drive new cars. That's just not enough, man. So the truth is, and you'll see it in your budget. You could drive your cars back to the lot. Right now, you could probably get more for your used car. This is the perfect time for this podcast to come out. You could probably get more for your 2-year-old car than you paid for it in the first place right now, because they need your chips, or I don't know why. Used cars are unbelievably expensive. You could drive that back down to the lot. You could get your money back, or at least wildly lower your expenses. you could get 2 used cars that are both 8 years old, that are crappy, that you're not in love with, that don't make your neighbors jealous of you, that don't make the people at work think you have more money than you have because they have no idea that you're actually living in debt every single month. But all of a sudden, it flips. And you're not 700 in the red, you're 500 in the black. And some of you have just bought too much house. You just have. And right now, house prices are extraordinarily high. And so maybe you got to sell your house. I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. Maybe you're, in debt and you can see it now because you've got all your income and you've got all your expenses and you're paying like $200 every other month, for Terminex to come out and spray your house for bugs or whatever. And it's like, you just got to go to Home Depot and buy your own stuff and put on your own mask and mix it up and spray the foundations of your house yourself. Because that's what you have to do right now. Because you are tired of you being a servant to your money. You are ready for your money to work for you. You're ready to be proactive. You're ready to discover a mission and use your resources to fund that mission, not using your resources to just try and build a facade of happiness, a facade of purpose, a facade of a life that you're hoping the people around you think is going well. And so what do? You need a budget. And with a budget, you line up your expenses. That's what you have to do. You have to get all of your income, all that you're making, and then you have to line up all of your expenses. And once you have your expenses, then you have to limit your spending. And so you've got to really ask, am I willing to spend so much on a car every single month that I have no money to put towards my future? That I someday I'll have no money to leave my children, that I'm going to have no money to put towards their college. So you begin to limit your spending, which means you have to interrogate your fixed expenses. And you have to begin to ask yourself, is it worth paying $200 a month for cable? Can I get Hulu TV or whatever for $30 a month and all of a sudden have $170 of flexibility? You have to begin to limit your spending. You got to make real informed decisions. You got to put a plan together. And then you have to target your debt. And so what isn't shown on this monthly budget is your debt. And this is going to be probably the most important column on your budget. So you have your income, then you have your fixed expenses. After your fixed expenses, you have what's left. And that's like your spending money. So maybe you have $800 left, like it shows on this budget. And you have to decide, how much of that am I going to spend on food? How much of that am I going to spend on entertainment, eating out, going to the movies, going to Top Golf, doing things with the family? And how much of that am I going to save? If you're not saving money, then you're not putting yourself in a position to not worry about your money. And at the end of that, you have your debt. And most people are living with some amount of debt. Many people are living with extraordinary amounts of debt. We certainly were. And so you're interrogating your expenses. You're figuring out whether or not you need to add income, whether for a season you got to go get on your grind, get another job. You're looking at how much money you want to keep flexible, if you have any flexible money. And then you're looking at your debt. In the same way we're lining out all of our expenses, you need to line out all of your debts. The game changer for Katie and I was to not just put, okay, I have $47,000 in student loans. It was to actually go into myfedloan.org. It was to actually go into my private student loans that I got from, Texas, whoever, and to look at the individual loans. This Stafford loan, that's $6,134.57, and to actually begin to line them out. Because once you line up your expenses and once you limit your spending, now what you're going to be able to do is to target that debt. As long as you're in debt, you are not wealthy. And that's worth thinking about. And that's worth having a change of mind and a change of philosophy, because some of you don't know where you got it from. Maybe it's something you saw your parents do. Maybe it's something you dreamed of doing. Maybe you have just bought into what all of your coworkers and friends are doing, but you have yourself convinced that you have to drive a new car every 2 to 3 years. Maybe you even just lease your cars. And so you've decided you're going to have a $400 or $600 or $800 payment for the rest of your life. Let me tell you something. A car that is leased or a car that is on loan from the bank is not adding to your wealth. You are working for that car. Until a car is paid off, it's not working for you. It is a burden. That is a burden that is placed on our shoulders. The book of wisdom in scripture called Proverbs says that the debtor is a slave to the lender. We are enslaving ourselves to the banks, enslaving ourselves to the credit unions, enslaving ourselves to the dealership, choosing to carry around something. I mean, let's just talk practically. If the bank owns your car, it does not add to your net worth. As soon as your car is paid off, you own it. And this goes back to the beginning. Are you working for your money, or is your money working for you? Do you own your things, or do your things own you? And so, some people would say never buy a new car because it's such a depreciating value. And I actually, it's like, I don't know. Maybe you have enough money to buy a new car. I don't know. Maybe you have your reasons, whatever. Even if it's a used car, most people are financing it. So you don't own it, and people are buying cars and they're putting them on 60-month loans, and then they're keeping them for 4 years and trading them in. You never owned that car. It never added to your wealth. And so what you do is you line up all of your debts. And then what I would suggest, and this is actually a Dave Ramsey principle, which is one of the programs we went through. Most of these programs they pretty much say the same thing, because wealth isn't magic. It's spending less than you make consistently over time. But you put your debts in order from least to greatest. And then you target your smallest debts first. You target your smallest debt first, because what we're trying to do, remember, you are in a financial cycle, and it's a cycle that's continuing to degrade, and it's going to eventually lead you to financial hell on earth. So we have to stop that cycle and begin to find a way to reverse its effects. We need to build a different kind of momentum. And so when you target your smallest debt first, what you do is you set yourself up for a quick win. And then if you pay off a debt and it's a credit card debt and it's only costing you $30 a month, as soon as it's paid off, you take that $30, you scoop it in to what you were paying on that debt, and then you put it on the next smallest debt. And so it's creating a snowball effect. You pay the minimums. If you have 10 debts, you pay the minimum possible amount on all of them, and then you put everything else that you have loose. You know your income, you've limited your expenses, you've interrogated them, you've changed some major things in your life, you have financial flexibility, you have some money set aside so that you can eat and go out to eat and enjoy your family. But then everything else you're just throwing at the smallest debt, and then you take it out and you take the money you were putting on it, you add to that pile and you put it on the next one. And that debt was $70 a month, and you knock it out in 3 more months, and now you have the $30 from the first debt, the $70 from the second debt. That's $100 more attached to what you have targeting your debt, and you go for the third smallest debt, and you knock them out and you knock them out, and you build momentum. Pretty soon, by the end of this, you're going to be putting $400, $500, $800, $1,200 on your last couple of debts, which means when you knock them out and you are debt free, that $1,200 moves over into your budget. All of a sudden, you have done the hard work to put yourself in a position to be wealthy. And it doesn't mean you make $300,000 a year. You might have a household income of $50,000 a year, but you've gotten serious about it. And some people make $50,000 a year and they drive brand new cars, and they go out every month and buy brand new clothes, name brand clothes. And they have just credit cards up to their eyeballs, and they don't go bargain shop for a new couch. They just go to Rooms to Go or wherever, and they just drop it. They just find that new sectional. They just find that, brand new leather cowhide, fold out bed, multi-level entertainment center, freaking, USB ports in the armrests, like lights that come out. It's like they don't replace their TV with like a Walmart 40-inch TV. It's like, no, it's going to be a 90-inch Sony, It's just how they're thinking about it. And what happens is when we're in a bad financial position, we need to pacify this lack of peace and contentment. And we think that we can do it by buying more stuff. What we don't realize is all we're doing is increasing our burden while trying to relieve it. And so we can do this, man. We can change our mind about this. You need a budget. You do. You have to determine your means. And the accrual of wealth and a wealthy lifestyle and a wealthy mentality, the way to wealth is finding your means and living below it. And that can be really, really difficult. And so I have like some bonus tips, and these are just some things for once you get going. I've already given you one of them. Target your smallest debts first and just work your way from least to greatest, knocking out those debts, rolling the money that you save from getting rid of that debt into the next one, and going and going and going. As quickly as you can, get 3 months of expenses in the bank. So what is wealth? Wealth is when you don't have to worry about your money. And so the lower you can get your means, the quicker you can get 3 months of expenses in the bank. If you're going to pay $1,200 a month in car loans, then that's $3,600 more dollars over 3 months. That's more savings you have to be able to cover all of your expenses. When you have 3 months of expenses in the bank, what that means is everyone can lose their jobs and you can survive for 3 months. What it means when there's 3 months of expenses in the bank, I mean, this is a tremendous goal. It might take 2 years to get there. It might take 5 years to get there. The peace of knowing that it can all hit the fan and you can survive for 3 months, that's overwhelming peace, man. It means that a real emergency can happen. Like somebody can end up in the hospital, like for real, ambulance rides, all the tests, everything, and you can pay for it. You have money in the bank, but you can't get 3 months of expenses in the bank if you don't have a budget, if you don't know how much money you have to put into savings. And so we got to become financially flexible. We have to interrogate our expenses. We have to make some changes. This is the wealthy way. Keep 3 months of expenses in the bank and then invest the rest. Here's something that I didn't learn until very recently. Now, there's a difference between wealthy and rich. And just because you're rich doesn't mean you're wealthy. You can be rich and be more miserable and have less peace and less joy in your life than someone who is dirt poor. But I'm going to talk about rich people. What I've learned is that rich people, people who have a lot of money, a lot of resources, and a lot of assets, rich people do not keep their money in banks. I did not know this. And maybe like every single person who's ever going to listen to this is like, yeah, duh. Everybody knows that. I didn't, man. I just thought like they just had these massive bank accounts with hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars or whatever. Rich people invest their money and they use their money to make money. And so keep 3 months liquid in the bank. Keep 3 months of cash in your bank account. I'm going to stand by the fact that that's a great idea because you can't always quickly get money out of your investments. So keep your 3 months, and maybe over time, I mean, I certainly would like to build to 6 months. I don't know that we quite have 3 months, but we're getting really close. That's a cushion where you don't have to worry as much, right? But then invest the rest. And this isn't an investment channel, and I'm not going to give like investment advice. We have a 403B that we put money into. There are Roth IRAs. There's 401ks. There are mutual funds. Here's the thing. There's all these different sectors of the stock market, and there's all these different ways to invest your money. The best thing that you can do statistically is give your money to professionals like in a mutual fund and allow them to invest it for you. Unless you can like really study this and do it full time, you probably aren't going to beat the market. But these people do this full time. It's what they're trained in doing. And so find a great company. If there are pastors listening to this, look at Guidestone. And this is kind of only for pastors, but Guidestone worked with pastors, and they take your money. And so that's what we do. We just give to them monthly. And then we've diversified a little bit into some other investment opportunities. Katie and I still don't have like an extraordinary amount of money. And so we're not investing a lot, but invest something. Get a retirement account. I'm going to get these numbers wrong. This is not going to be factual. But this is what I remember. When I was 22, I saw a kind of a thing that was pushing people to invest in retirement accounts. And here's what they said. Something like this. If you were to put $200 a month from age 22 to 30 in a retirement account and then never touch it again until you're 65 years old, and then person B started at 45 years old and put $1,000 a month all the way to 65. At the end, when both of those people, person A and person B, got to 65, the person who started at 22, only put $200 a month till 30 years old, would end up with way more money. So time is of the essence. And maybe you're 45 right now and you're like, holy crap, I've never put anything into retirement. Look, start today. Start piling in. Start investing your money. Investment is where you allow your money to produce more money. And you have to be wise. Do your research. Look up these companies. Look up these mutual funds. Figure out what kind of things, whether you want to pay taxes up front or pay taxes later. I promise you, because I look at them, there are like millions and millions of YouTube channels that give financial advice. There's great books you can read about it. But this is kind of the bonus tips. This is where you end up. This is once you're, no longer drowning in your debt. This is when you start really stacking away money for peace of mind, for contentment, and you begin to invest the rest. Now, I'm really pushing you hard to just, unless you just got it like that. If you've got the money and you look at your income and your expenses and you have plenty, all you need is a plan and you can start investing today, that's fine. But you probably shouldn't be driving a new car. If you don't have financial like health and you're not experiencing peace and joy, if you don't have hope about your financial future, there's no rationality in my mind for you to drive a new car. Drive an old piece of crap that you can own and it's yours. It works for you. Live below your means. Ruthlessly interrogate your expenses. And what I also want to say is don't stop living. And so I have seen the other side of this. And you can handle your finances in such a way where you become so radical about this process and about stacking money away and investing your money and getting out of debt. You can become so radical in that you actually stop living. And so through the process of financial stewardship, you can become so radical and so hardcore that even though you have no debt and you're putting thousands and thousands of dollars away and you're making all the right moves, you're still not wealthy. Because wealthy doesn't start in your wallet. It starts in your mind. And so I've seen people who go so radical on this that they quit living, that they don't take their kids out to their favorite restaurant for their birthdays. And when their kids go to birthday parties, they don't buy that kid presents because it's not in the budget. That doesn't make you wealthy. That makes you a bad person. Like, they don't go on vacations. And our oldest, Lane, just turned 16 years old. It's very obvious to us. We have 2 years left with him. We haven't hit all of our financial goals. We could certainly get really hardcore about this really quick. I'm traveling with my kid. I'm spending time with my kid. I'm doing fun things with my kids. I'm going on vacations. And even when we were really struggling and just drowning in debt and making very, very little money, we went on vacations. And so what you have to do is don't stop living, but start living wisely. And what you can do is allow creativity to enhance your frugality. You can become frugal through being creative. And so when we were making basically no money and we had all this debt, we still bought SeaWorld passes every year. And that's like, we're a family of 5, $90 a person. We'll call it $500 to get these SeaWorld passes. $500 a year, I promise you, we didn't have room for that in our budget. And on the surface, it was like not a wise decision. However, once you have the pass, you can go all year long. And so here's what happens when you're in the cycle is you buy the SeaWorld pass and you're already spending the money. So then you go to SeaWorld and everyone gets a turkey leg, and everyone gets a churro, and everyone gets a large drink, and everyone buys a shirt, and everyone gets a Shamu, squeeze doll, and everyone plays the arcade games. And so by the end of every trip, you've spent another $400 in the park. And so just be creative. And we're not going to stop living. We live in San Antonio. I'm going to take my kids to SeaWorld. We're going to go to Aquatica. We're going to go to the water park. We're going to do those things. But we're going to drive there in our car that's 15 years old. And we're going to get out in our off-brand clothes. And we're going to get our garage sale stroller. And we're going to pack it full of off-brand High C, a jar of peanut butter, a loaf of bread. Nobody gets a Shamu toy. Like that's our entertainment. And we make the memories we make, but we get creative and we stay frugal and we think through it. And we think through it because we've created the tools to think through it, because we have a budget, because we know any money that we spend, what it detracts from and what it takes away from. And we plan our vacations really wisely. And we just think through every aspect of them. And we're not becoming reactive and getting to the end of a vacation and not knowing how we're going to pay our car loans. We're being proactive and ensuring that we're being wise, because if we can be wise, we can be wealthy, and you can be wealthy at almost any income level. You can be incredibly rich and not experience wealth. Be incredibly rich and incredibly depressed. Or you can learn the wealthy way, and you don't stop living. You don't stop loving your kids. You don't stop looking for opportunities. You put your kids in summer camps. You put them in basketball camps. You put them in sports leagues. And those things cost money. But you can do it because you're sacrificing from the right places. You're really interrogating. And if you're married, you're joining together and you're making these decisions together. You're putting a plan in place. There is a way to live a wealthy life. You have to spend less money than you make. And to do that, you have to know exactly what your means are. When you discover your means, you can live below them. This is really scratching the surface, and there's so much more to say about it, but I hope that this at least begins to challenge you in how you think about your finances. And the beautiful thing about beginning to live a wealthy life right where you are, you're making $40,000 a year, or maybe you're a college student and you're making $10 an hour working in a restaurant somewhere. You can start right now, because the world is going to tell you, swipe the credit card, buy the new car as soon as you have a little bit of money. Like, you can live a wealthy life right now. At 19 years old, you can do it. If you're 65 years old and you've never made a good financial decision in your life, you can start right now. You can move into your 70s with a financial fortitude that you've never experienced before. You can maybe even get to the end of your life and have something to leave behind as a legacy. For sure, you can set a role model for your kids and your grandkids. You can live this kind of life. And it is a life, most importantly, that removes distractions and pushes you towards your life's purpose. The hardest part of being under financial hardship and not having a plan in place is that it drains so much energy, so much emotion, so much capacity for your life, that it will actually remove opportunity and ability to progress in your career and to make the kind of choices and have the kind of energy that will actually move you towards higher income opportunities. If you can begin to live a wealthy life with a wealthy mindset right where you are, it will free you up to think and dream, to be the best coworker, the best manager, the best worker, to start the best business, to live a life of purpose and power and potential. This is the wise way, and this is the wealthy way. It's so good to be back, jumping on the podcast again. I want to thank you guys so much. I want to encourage you to use your voice, man, to really let people know about this podcast. You can share it on social media. You can text it to people. You can do it old school and just talk about it with your friends and family. Again, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Clayton Tyner. That's Tyner. Make sure you're subscribed to the show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Leave a comment if you feel like it. Let me know that you're watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know where you agree, where you disagree. Want to thank you guys so much. So appreciative of anyone who's listening. I love you guys. We'll see you next time.